like even with failure, I recall remembering and believing at that moment that I lost my business and I failed. I strongly believed in me that failure is just the inability to get up again. And that all I had to do was, if I got up again and I carried on and I just kept going, that I wasn't that stigmatized failure. Because I think that's what we fear in failure. I think we don't necessarily fear the failure. We fear the stigma attached to the failure.
Welcome to Risk and Rise, the podcast where we explore the journey of overcoming the fear of failure, embracing risk, and achieving success in entrepreneurship, creativity, and personal growth. I'm your host, Talana Simpson, and I'm thrilled to embark on this journey with you. Together we'll discover the strategies, insights, and shifts in our thinking and attitudes that are needed to turn setbacks into stepping stones and transform fear into fuel for success. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's episode of Risk and Rise. Kerryne Krause of Cryo Slices calls herself the Chief Excitement Officer. She's not only the CEO of the business, but she's also the founder and the innovator behind the technology that she has brought to the world and taken globally. We're going to be learning a lot about purpose and passion and self-belief and innovation and risks and just the journey of being an entrepreneur, and especially how to handle those downs that we have, those failures. So enjoy this conversation with Kerryne. Well, welcome, Kerryne. To get us going, when you hear Risk and Rise, what comes to mind for you?
I guess that you can rise through any circumstances, I guess. Taking risks. What is that saying? Fortune favors the bold. That's what comes to mind. Fortune favors the bold.
And I think you've had a very bold entrepreneurial journey. I know we were just saying how we met many years ago in my early days of the One Matchstick story. But so maybe share a bit about your journey of how you initially confronted, were there any fears in actually getting going? Because I think part of your story with iSlices is also the innovation part of it.
It was a tough journey, and I think naivety stops you being fearful. I think it's helpful. I always say to entrepreneurs, start as young as possible. And prior to iSlices, my very first company, I was 23. And at 23, it's wonderful. You think you're invincible. You have no doubts. I had no fear. You're bold, you're brave, you run into things. It's wonderful. You haven't had the hard knocks of life knock you down too badly. So it's quite easy to run full head on into something. Often we run into walls, but that's a different story.
Yeah, so that naivety and youth, as you say.
Wonderful. I had no fear. I had no fear back then. I'm probably more fearful. I wouldn't say less risk averse, but I guess I take more calculated risks than necessarily those impulsive ones. Though I guess if I hadn't taken those giant leaps back then, I wouldn't be where I am today. Sometimes I think it's good to not know what the future holds. I think that's been very cleverly designed, because if we knew what the future would hold and we saw all the obstacles and we saw some of the failures that we have to face in order to actually get where we need to go. It's part of growth. It's part of success. It's part of getting where you need to go. But if we saw that ahead, I think we wouldn't even start. I think I wouldn't have even started if I knew what the journey would have entailed. Perhaps have gone and found a comfortable job somewhere. But no, I have no regrets. I think entrepreneurship finds you. It's who you are. It's a big part of my purpose in life. And so I don't think I had much choice in the matter. And I've loved the journey, to be honest.
Which is so interesting, because I think that entrepreneurship is that paradox, because you just said in one part of that if you had foreseen the future, you probably wouldn't have done it. If you had seen the challenges you would have faced, and yet you love it, and you feel it brings purpose to you. So how do we, it's like, I think that's what people need to understand. It is this paradox. There's emotions around the hard parts, but there's also the absolute joy of it.
That's life. I mean, if you think of birthing, even those that have birthed natural babies, I mean, you've got the pain before you've got the blessing of this new life, and everything in life comes with a price. I remember sitting down with my business partner 20 years ago and saying to him, this is the price we're going to pay, because I'd had a first business and I'd had a business failure. And I said, this is the price that we're going to pay. Are you prepared to pay the price? You need to know upfront there's a price for everything in life. So there is no, I don't even think a standard job, a business, a dream, a hobby, an ambition, anything that isn't going to come with a price of sacrifice, of hardship, of obstacles, of failure. And I think if you settle that up front and understand that it's going to come fraught with these things, you don't then spend the time going, well, it's your fault, and well, now we've got cash flow issues and we can't pay bills and you got us into this, or, you don't have any of that. You don't have any regrets. You don't have any should I, could I. No, you just put your head down, you get stuck in, and you've got to climb. It's a climb, and sometimes you've got a view, and then you hit another valley and you've got to climb again, and you hit another valley and you've got to climb again. And each time you're building muscle, you're building tenacity, you're building endurance, you're building character, you're learning, you're growing. And that's the story of life, really, not just entrepreneurship.
It is.
Yeah.
So having that expectation up front is what you think has helped you, especially in the sounds like the second business. So what happened in the first? What went wrong there that if you look back, you can now, became learnings?
Wow. So I think they're going to make a Netflix series out of my story one day. It's that juicy, and I think we'll need a whole different podcast for that story. I was young, I was naive, I was incredibly trusting. I knew nothing about business, absolutely nothing. I kind of fell into entrepreneurship, or it found me, to be quite honest. And I made every classic mistake in the book, absolutely every classic mistake. I was taken to the cleaners, literally, by my own staff and partners. I didn't see it coming. It was an industrial sabotage story at its most exciting. But, if I look back, I have no regrets because, well, firstly, I was really lucky to have had a mentor in my life that taught us from young principles, like even with failure. I recall remembering and believing at that moment that I lost my business and I failed. I strongly believed in me that failure is just the inability to get up again. And that all I had to do was, if I got up again and I carried on and I just kept going, that I wasn't that stigmatized failure. Because I think that's what we fear in failure. I think we don't necessarily fear the failure. We fear the stigma attached to the failure. And, I hid when I was building Ice Slices, the current business that's, praise the Lord, still standing and growing again now after COVID. I remember hiding from the world and from the industry that I was in. And a feeling like that failure. You cannot help it. I think those emotions come, but you've just got to arrest them. You've just got to work those emotions. It's like that saying that says, feel the fear and do it anyway. So I had lost my self-confidence. I'd hit rock bottom in almost every area of my life. It honestly was the biggest rock bottom place I could have ever have imagined to be. I never in my life imagined life could get that low. And I just got up the next day and I started again, because I'd had this concept and a gut feel about this current business that I'd been wanting to get off the ground, but I knew there was a timing. And so when I lost the first business, and experience the betrayal and the failure and the disappointment, and your first business is like your baby. It's incredibly personal, and so the second time around I've tried to detach myself from that. It's a business, it is personal to a degree, but my identity is not wrapped up in this.
Yes.
I am more than what I do. Being who I am is who I am. And so that never goes away. What you do will come and go. Businesses come and go. It doesn't define you. It's not who you are. And so I think that whole experience taught me that. But I just got up again and I started again and I just slowly built. And I had to repair trust, regain trust in people and humanity. And there were all sorts of things I had to almost relearn again. And I just persevered in that with a very strong vision, a very strong sense of self-belief, which I believe people need. You need a very strong sense of self-belief and even a network of people that believe in you. So a massive enabler for me over the years on my journey was being part of business incubators and having a mom and friends or family members that believed in me, that championed me, that supported me. It's enormous, because you do have those lonely moments. You do have those moments you second guess yourself, and being surrounded by people that believe in you and champion you and support you and help you keep going is, it's a big one.
There was shared so much there, but the self-belief is really important. So I wanted to ask more about it, but I don't even know what the question is. Like, how do you believe in yourself? Like, it's interesting. So you had this failure where you lost trust. It sounds like in other people, but was there loss of trust in yourself as well?
I think so.
And how does that relate then to still believing yourself that the next day you managed to get up to start your next idea?
It's a good question, and it's a tough one, because where does that inherent deep self-belief come from? So I think a lot of it came from mentors or people, influential people in my youth. I think that's where it really gets grounded. But having said that, I'm careful to say that's the only place it can come, that you have to have that growing up, because there's so many people that don't have that growing up and somehow find that along the way. And I think the way that we find it is through little wins. You've got to get lots of little wins under the belt. And you've got to keep reminding yourself. Actually, it's just come to mind now. I remember a technique in a workshop that we were taught, where when you're feeling like a failure, you're feeling like you're lacking confidence, to take a piece of paper and write on it everything you have won at, no matter how small, all the little wins, all the accomplishments, whether it was, I won the helpfulness trophy in school, I think in standard 5 or grade 7. Write that down, man, I'm helpful, and people acknowledge that, and that is a gift, and I can do that, and I can do that well, even if it's something as small as being helpful. And when you write it down and you look back on your life, you actually realize that you're not just that momentary failure. It's not who you are, and it helps you detach from attaching a moment in time or your history to your identity. And so I find getting lots of little wins under the belt, it builds confidence. And then you take a little bit of a bigger step, or you try something a little bigger or bolder, and then you get another little win. And, even through the failure, if you can take failure as a learning or a lesson, that's even a win. You can turn that failure into a win. So I look back on everything that I had failed on in that first business, every mistake I made, and I wove it into the foundation and tapestry of my current business. And I used that to build the foundations and to make stronger foundations and to learn from it. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that first business failure. I honestly wouldn't have the strong foundations today that I stand on had I not had made those mistakes or had that failure.
Oh, and it's such a powerful message to try and let people remember that. I think it's so hard in the moment of failure because it feels so yuck.
Yes.
But everyone I've been speaking to and about this, it passes. And if we put it in perspective, as you say, you can just see it's just one little blimp on the whole journey. And you can learn from that blimp, yeah.
Perspective, such a good word. Such a good word. I find often detailed people need visionary, big picture people to often say, step back and just look at the bigger picture. I've got a board member that always says, get into the helicopter, Kerryne. Just get into the helicopter. And, over the years, if I look back, I remember there were companies that were doing so much better than me. I thought, surely I should be further, faster by now. I even had people say that to me, man, you've been going for surely you should be wealthier, bigger, etc., etc. And I look back on some of those companies that honestly, they got into the market globally in enormous ways. It looked like they were the rock stars of our industry. And 2 years later, you couldn't find them. They were gone. And so sometimes you can look at that one moment in time and make it the big thing, and it isn't the big thing. I recall even in this current business on our journey some years back, I think I was a bit burnt out. I was tired. I had distributors all over the world keeping me very busy doing all sorts of things. I think when people are not performing, they try and take the attention off themselves and they try and put it on you. Anyway, all sorts of things were happening. And I think I was just kind of feeling a little low and a little down. And I called a meeting with all our board members and a couple of shareholders. And I said to them, okay, I want to confront the brutal facts. Let's confront them. You haven't had your return on investment yet. We haven't shot the lights out of this business as far as we wanted to. If this was your company, are you humoring us as entrepreneurs? Should we keep going? If this was your company, would you still be, running it and pushing hard and, trying to get there? And they listened to me very patiently and quietly and nodded, typical suits. And at the end of it, I recall the top dog at the venture capital unit at IDC. He looked at me and he said, Kerryne, when we invested in your business, I think it had been 10 years prior to that. He said we invested in about 40 companies out of this unit at the IDC. He said, and out of those 40 companies, he said 20 don't even exist. They've gone. And some of them were billions that they invested. We were a small investment in comparison. He said those companies have gone. They don't even exist. Out of the last 20, 10 of them, we've impaired our shares. We've impaired them. We've written them off basically. And out of the final 10, there's only 3 companies that haven't come to us for more money or for rescuing per se. And you are one of those. And Talana, it's like somebody blew an incredible amount of wind beneath my wings in that moment. And it just gave me the most incredible perspective. And I thought, you know, if you've got a business, and any entrepreneur listening out there, if you've got a business and you're still standing, you're a rock star in the economy, in what we faced over the years. I mean, we've gone through some hairy stuff. We went through the global crash of 2008-9. There have been so many things that we have triumphed and overcome, to just be standing still, to be giving our staff jobs, to be paying them, to be keeping our supply chain going, to be keeping our customers in fantastic products and services, and you know, just that alone is a big win. That's a massive accomplishment, to just trump and triumph over all the statistics of people who unfortunately don't have their businesses going anymore. Hopefully they're on the second, third, fourth one and keeping going and keeping trying and failing forward. But it's a big thing just to be standing. And that was big perspective for me that day.
Yeah. Well done. That's like,
we are in comparison to most.
Sure. So is there anything else that you're going to help us learn about failure? Like that is part of our inner work, because we've spoken about self-belief and those counting the small wins, because that builds the confidence. There's a lot of resilience, you know, getting up again in your story. That's not identifying with the business, the doing. I mean, I talk about that a lot, is separating our esteem or our sense of worth from what we do. It's for me, it's the foundation of it. It really does allow you to just see failure as feedback. It's just how you learn and grow. That's the only way you can, is to stretch that bit more and work out how that works, so that you can go to the next level.
Exactly. Yes. I think I can talk a little bit about purpose.
Yes.
Because when you find your purpose, that helps you detach from your doing. So more than 20 years, about 20 years ago or so, I think I discovered my purpose. And it was through a workshop, and it's 3 words. I exist too. And you need 1 word at the end of that. Now, it's quite an exercise to go through, but you can look at everything. You can actually ask people for feedback. You can ask friends and family, what do you think my greatest contribution to society is as a person? What are my strengths? What do you enjoy most about me? What do you think makes me who I am? If you can't kind of find that yourself, or you're struggling to find that yourself. So mine all those years ago was, I exist to inspire. So it doesn't matter what I'm doing in my daily life. I run a small athletics club, Run Walk for Life Midrand branch, because I just love exercise, sport, people, helping people go from the couch, literally getting their health and wellness going. And it doesn't matter whether I'm doing that, whether I'm manufacturing ice slices and shipping them around the world, whether I'm on a podcast like this today and not actually busy in my business right now, or whether I'm with my sports community, or I'm on Facebook posting things. If I'm inspiring people, I'm living my purpose. And that just makes it so much easier to separate yourself out from this doing, and to which failure can be attached, because you cannot be a failure as a human being, as a person. Everybody's been given some beautiful qualities, a talent or 10. It doesn't matter if it's a small talent or a big talent, or 1 talent or 10 talents. Everybody's got stuff that they bring to the world, the beauty of them, the uniqueness of them. And you cannot be a failure when you're living that, when you're being authentic to who you are, and just living your life authentically, and just being you to the fullest potential that you can be. So if folk can try and find and define what they exist to be or do for the world, I think that would help a lot. And then a lot of failures attached to finance. Oh, I lost my big car. I had to downsize my beautiful big home. My children can't go to a private school anymore. Whatever it is, and they attach. There's so much stigma attached with finance and material possessions. And if at all possible, downsize your life now. Make your life as simple and as kind of not dependent on what you do every day. Even if you have to live leaner and smaller, the freedom that brings, that should you lose your job, should you lose your business, it's okay. It's not going to wipe you out or take you down. And do it now, even if you've got all the wealth and all the money and you're in a season where things are going well. Don't have debt. Get out of debt. Live lean. Get off grid, per se, of kind of mainstream, banks owning everything that you have and creditors chasing you. And it just brings a freedom. And I found that's incredibly helpful.
It's almost like then redefining what success is, because that's often is like the other side. People say the other side of failure is success. So what is actually success to you? Is it living on purpose, where your purpose is to inspire? So if you get to do that, as you said, through one Facebook post,
correct, you're a success.
That is success.
Yes.
Versus the fancy car is how you define success, because that can get written off, stolen, it's gone. It's in a eye blink, blink of an eye.
I agree. It's got no weight. It's got no impetus. It's just stuff. I mean, when we go one day, we certainly don't take it with us. So it's just stuff. But the legacy are the lives you've impacted, the people you've met, the memories you've built, the loved ones. I don't think anybody lies on their deathbed and counts all the material possessions they have. That's not what they're thinking about. They perhaps thinking about regrets or the people that have loved them or the people that are around their bed, the impact that they've had. If you've just impacted one life, your life is counted. One animal, perhaps, if you prefer animals to humans. I know a few who do. Do a lot of rescuing. But exactly, Tulana, I think it's time that we redefine success. And I think the world is starting to redefine success. And I think COVID helped us to start that journey. And now we just need to be more deliberate about that journey.
That's it, yeah. And then I just want to link it back to what you said, I think, in the beginning, that you said it's not actually the actual failure that we fear, it's the stigma related to it. And if you've defined your success as being that outward, materialistic, external, when the failure happens, and often it's the financial is the easiest way to measure the failure, right? That stigma is so much more. It's because it's based on other people's perceptions. So I talk about other esteem. If we have our sense of worth linked to what other people think about us, and we base it on the doing or the actual materialistic things, then yes, when that goes, we feel like a failure. We're so linked to it, and we so that fear, because that then links to the fear of rejection, I suppose, that we then will perceive to be rejected by people, and it's a false kind of relationship, because what they really want is the car to be
correct.
Then you.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what they want. And the people that really matter are going to love you for who you are. And even if they're a handful, you're wealthy if you've got a handful of people that have loved you unconditionally over your life, that you can call on, that support you, that have seen the good, the bad, the ugly, can cry with you and celebrate with you. And that's where the true wealth lies. And I agree 100%. I think if we try, and I have friends that immigrated to the UK, and they said when they were living in South Africa, and predominantly Johannesburg, with all the living up to, everybody's expectations. And if the neighbor got a bigger pool, they had to get a bigger pool. And if they built on, they had to build on. And they said their marriage was a wreck. Their children were getting counseling. Their lives were actually a mess. Yes, from the outward, they had everything that looked amazing, but actually their lives were a failure, because where it counts, relationships, how your children are doing and flourishing, how your marriage or your relationships are doing, is where the real wealth is. And they immigrated to the UK, where they would walk their kids to the government schools. And they said all of a sudden, not being in that up with the Joneses frenetic kind of, and I didn't realize how much of that we have in Joburg, and perhaps South Africa. Got to have the biggest car, our cars are enormous on the roads. Their lives turned around, their marriage is flourishing, their children are flourishing. Just removing that up with the Joneses has honestly set their course on a new trajectory and changed their lives. And I just love those stories. And if we share those kind of stories, then it gives everybody else permission to not have to try and be up with the Joneses, and rather just find their own lane, own purpose, own happiness, own sense of well-being, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, so to consciously choose how you measure your success, and not just go with what the Joneses are doing.
Correct.
So that's very interesting. And the difference between, say, the UK then and South Africa, specifically Joburg, because I think Joburg does have that a bit. What else? Because you've been so involved in, I think, receiving funding, being in incubators, not only in South Africa, but you've taken your business internationally and that. What else have you noticed about the South African landscape? Are there any specific issues that we face in entrepreneurship that is quite unique to us?
We're very conservative.
Yeah.
We're a very conservative consumer. But having said that, so if you're selling a very innovative product or service, you're probably going to find that the international markets are going to better serve you. And we found that. We had our board say, you've got to make a success in South Africa first before you even look to the international markets. And honestly, if we'd done that, we wouldn't have stood very long. We have done 90% of our business abroad and exporting. And it just is the nature of our market. We are a little bit behind the rest of the world. We're very conservative. And so it depends on the industry and the landscape you're in, whether South Africa is going to be your market or perhaps offshore is going to be your market, which for us it was. And you've just got to go with where your business takes you and where the doors open up, and you cannot go by the textbooks at all. Having said that, interestingly enough, when I raised capital in South Africa, and we think there's so much corruption, and there is in South Africa. We know there's a lot of corruption, but every single grant and every organization I dealt with in South Africa was very rigorously run, but also very entrepreneur friendly. So yes, you had to fill in all the proper forms, you had to give in the business plans, you had to tick all the boxes, you had to do all your reporting, you were held accountable. So everything was run incredibly well. From that perspective, and we got a lot of grant funding and assistance over the years. When I did a grant fund in the UK, I was actually quite taken aback by how entrepreneurial unfriendly these entrepreneurial grants were. It was, honestly, I look back at my experience in South Africa and I thought, man, we did that very right. Because yes, we had all the checks and balances in place, but they knew how to deal with entrepreneurs, even at governments and corporate level. They had the right people in place. And I found it really, really difficult to navigate that grant. So for example, I would find cheaper and better and more efficient ways to use the money that I was given in a UK grant, for example, developing our medical wound care product offshore. And I would come back and I would say, I can do more with the project with less money. And they say, no, in your application, you said you're going to do this milestone and that one. I said, but don't you understand, in the entrepreneurial landscape, you thumb-sucking most of it. You pioneering. You've never been there before. And I'm telling you, I'm going to give you bigger outcomes, better outcomes with less of the money. They were not interested. And that was incredibly frustrating to deal with. So it's interesting. We think the grass is greener on the other side. Having a UK subsidiary company, I've done lots of business in the UK, and there's some things that work better and are easier to do, just navigating traffic for a start, and getting to meetings. But there are things we do so well in South Africa that you miss there. So when a courier company or a shipping company comes to fetch your goods, the guys load. They use their muscles and they load boxes and shippers. And because we don't have very heavy products, we don't need forklifts and things like that. And they get stuck in and they help. And they are in the UK, nobody will pick up a box. You have to hire a separate person or have somebody there to just lift a box to put it in the back of a van. And there are just so many things we do right here and that we have an advantage of in South Africa versus abroad. And there's no perfect place. There's no perfect country. You've got to find what works for you and your family and suits you and be free in that. But I found that there's amazing things that work incredibly well in the UK, of course, and but also things that work amazingly well in South Africa that don't work as well in the UK. And that's been interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Thanks. And I realize some people listening to this may not actually know your products, and I think it will help just with the perspective of everything you shared. Just explain a bit about ice slices and how you came up with the idea, just briefly.
Sure.
Just to
so I saw a gap in the market. I think that's where most entrepreneurs start. We saw a gap for a quick fix lifestyle product. There were only creams that you rubbed into your skin in those days. There were no such thing as patches or gels for a quick fix lifestyle fix. And I went looking for a technology, found one at the CSIR, but only developed to laboratory scale. My tech transfer package was a one-page laboratory recipe that didn't really work. And there began a 10-year journey of finishing all the tech development of these cryogel polymer dermal delivery treatment pads. So we now make all sorts of patches, face masks and wound care patches and things like that, not just the high-tech cucumber slice for puffiness, dark circles, tiredness, redness, and wrinkles. See, Talana, you too can look this good at 90. Eh? Is my product. And so it's a dermal delivery system, but we had to develop the manufacturing processes around this technology because it had never been done before. And that was a very arduous decade long of development, and eventually got to market and been exporting ever since.
I just love the story.
Thank you.
Maybe just another question then, just we're talking a bit, so we've got like a lot about failure and then a bit about the South African landscape. What about as a woman? Just wondered, from a woman's perspective, are there any challenges that you think you faced that the male counterpart doesn't experience to the same extent?
You know, I think having been quite a naive person in my life, I didn't necessarily notice it or was looking for it. I probably couldn't believe that anybody would treat me as a woman any differently to a man. So I think that helped and has helped in my life, the naivety of it all. But I remember in my first business discovering that the landscape wasn't very equal. It was quite a funny story. So I had a male business partner in that business, and it didn't help that I was 23 as well and probably looked a lot younger than I was, which I've been told over the years. So people would come to a meeting and the two of us would sit in the boardroom and you could see the body language. The men would be turned to face my male business partner to ask, and they would address the questions to him, and he would kind of look at me and say, okay, well, you're better equipped to handle this. And I'd answer the question, and the second question would come, and the body language was still angled towards, my male counterpart, and he would then defer the questions to me again. And this happened about 2 or 3 times. And then eventually you could see the whole body language and the chair turn. And now they were facing me and kind of addressing me as CEO of the company. So I found over time, just looking back, that as a woman, we often have to prove ourselves first. If you are male, preferably tall and good looking, and preferably white, I'm sorry to say, and you walk into a board meeting, I think you just command and get an instant amount of respect. It doesn't matter who you are in a good suit. As a woman, and I think particularly women of color, even more so, you first got to prove yourself. You first got to prove you've got the intelligence and the capability, then get the respect, and then you can start building on that foundation. Whereas, and maybe it's not as prominent anymore. Maybe things have changed and are changing. I don't look for it. I don't focus on it. It doesn't bother me in the least. I just try and get the job done as best I can and move on. And I must say, I've had a tremendous amount of respect from men in business in my life. So it hasn't been that, just because a person is male, they've been disrespectful. What has been challenging is I have had a few not so nice incidences of harassment, sexual harassment in the workplace, like not okay to be in a board meeting and have somebody talk about your blue eyes or whatever. It's like if I was a man sitting here, we're here to discuss finance or, management accounts. What do my looks or have to do with this meeting? So and even in one-on-one dinner meetings that have been arranged, some harassment that's taken place. So we have to just weather those things. Unfortunately, it's part of life, and those haven't been such fun. Very early in my working career, I managed a little outdoor store while I was studying my honors degree, and had a boss that would try and show me pornography in the unit. And I think he was trying to take me into the back store and appropriately grabbed at me. And so, over the years, I've had lots of that in the workplace. And, I think from young women need to be taught how to deal with that. And what their rights are and what's appropriate, because now this is your boss. You want the job. Do you react? Do you suck it up? And in my first job, I sucked it up. I would just fob him off and just try my best, but stayed in the job. And that's because you're young and you're naive and you're in shock and you've never experienced this. You don't know how to deal with it. And so but as you get older and wiser, you then learn how to deal with it much better. But unfortunately, and those things are stressful. I mean, as if business wasn't stressful enough and entrepreneurship stressful enough. So I think we do have those added extra stresses and challenges.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got my own stories to relate to that. It is so sad that it is such a reality. So maybe we can just take this opportunity just to ask, as we're calling them, our male counterparts in entrepreneurship, to be allies to us, to stick up to. I think if more men can actually speak up about that behavior when they notice it, and say that's not okay, and let's focus on the finances or whatever it is, just.
Exactly. I mean, I reported one incident to the board and they did nothing about it. And there were other men on the board and they did nothing about it. And you're right. So we need the allies at least say, this kind of behavior is inappropriate, or, we feel uncomfortable, you addressing Kerryne that way or whatever it is. We're here to discuss minutes of a meeting or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we do. We need men to be allies. And I think the only reason they probably not is they are feeling the discomfort and they probably are wanting to rescue, but I think they're afraid of confrontation. And confrontation for most people is a scary thing. We tend to want to avoid confrontation, where actually confrontation is extremely helpful, even in relationships, because once you've had your first fight, even in a relationship, that relationship strengthens. You learn something a bit more about that person. Sometimes there's more respect, there's better boundaries, there's all sorts of advantages coming out of confrontation. Obviously, learning how to do that well is a skill we need to learn. And I don't think most of us learn it growing up necessarily, seeing parents fighting or going at each other or the likes, unless we had, extremely good role models. But we need to learn how to confront, and we need to learn how to confront skillfully and also not be afraid of that. And I think men also get caught off guard. And also, having said that, I have recently heard some stories from men that have been sexually harassed. And that is even a bigger subject, because we can talk about it. There's all sorts of organizations championing us and our cause, etc. But man, for the men that have to be silent and endure that, and some of the embarrassment or shame or whatever that comes with it being the other way around, that is frightening.
Yeah. So basically, I think what we're saying is should be no to any form of sexual harassment or any form of harassment, and we should all be finding the courage to speak up more. Correct. And I mean, this is one of my other favorite topics. So besides entrepreneurship and getting over the fear of failure, it's courageous conversations. So I have another whole podcast just around, around that. And I've always said to people, it's not that we should or shouldn't speak up. It's that we should, but it's about how, which you've really, how do you say that's not okay? That's not cool. And I've heard that was one of my favorite sayings I've heard from someone who she just says, that's not cool. And you just move on from it. But anyway, so hopefully we've given people, some things to think about in terms of that and the experience. Because what I really want to do with the show, and just, I suppose, as part linked to my purpose, is just get people talking more and taking more of a chance. We need more entrepreneurs. We need them because they not only solve problems, fill the gaps like you did, but they create jobs. Yes. They stimulate the economy. They add value to people's lives through it. So we really need people to get out of their own ways and just to do what is in there. Because, I mean, I think going back to your story, you said you had this idea for ice slices for a long time, and then the first failure gave you the chance to then step into it. So those people that have those ideas, I hope our stories are going to help you to take that step.
I agree, Talana. And you know what? It's less risky being entrepreneurial today, because I mean, we saw in COVID, businesses, big corporations, downsized, shut down, retrenched. There's no guarantee if you have a job today. So I think it's actually less risky to be carving out your own future. I mean, if you're able to take a skill or a talent and just persevere and endure, live lean for a few years, just build a good foundation, just build something good, you can then not have to depend on a monthly paycheck and live at risk all your life. You can have an annuity income. You can just live a little bit more free and less stressed about, covering monthly bills, or am I going to lose my job, or every time there's talking about downsizing, or when you reach 60. That's horrific to me that corporations are laying off people that turn 60. I mean, all of that experience, you've still got another 20, 30 years of good life and energy. How can you lay people off at 60 with all that experience and still all that energy? 60 is the new 40, for crying in a bucket. So you cannot just find yourself, stuck. And I think it's less risky. And a lot of it can be started on the side. You know, we talk about people say, oh, I don't have the time. Yes, we do. If you watch 2 hours of television a day or spend an hour on Facebook or social media, or if you want to, you will find the time. There is the time. I mean, yes. I've just kept adding things in other businesses and thinking, when am I going to find the capacity? And you grow into the capacity. And you just have to lay aside some of those comforts and some of those indulgences that actually just rob you of investing into something meaningful in your life or for your kids' lives, future. And you can start something on the side. You absolutely can while you still have a job, even if you want to do it that way. But just do it. I agree. Just do it.
So it's interesting, like for you, you see having a job as being risky, because that's just as we're coming towards the end now, just to touch on risk a bit, because I think you spoke about, I think when you started, you took bigger risks, but you were younger, more naive, you were still learning, and it was good, it worked out. But also now you take more calculated risks. So I talk about risk fitness, your ability to take the risk and manage the fear around it. Anything that comes to mind when you think about, like how do you take a calculated risk? What is that to you?
Well, it's just stopping to think and plan a bit. So unfortunately, some of us were born impulsive, natural marketers, and I get bored quickly. So in the earlier years, risk was uncalculated. And I think by the grace of God, worked out to a degree, but it definitely had its downfalls. That's for sure. So I think with risk, as long as you just think things through and you plan. So I've done a million business plans and I hate them because I've done way too many. But what they do is they make you think through every area of your business. And at least if we just do that, if we think through every area of our business, we try and plan as much as we can. There's a saying that says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so just making sure that all the tick boxes are checked. So for me, it's like, does whatever decision I'm making now fit into the big picture and the purpose of this organization and myself? How's it going to impact the people in my organization? Can we afford it? And potentially, if there is a bit of a financial risk we're taking, have I worked out that I can repay it? That, you know, if something goes wrong, what are the pitfalls? What could go wrong? And sketching those scenarios, for example, and making sure, and then what processes and systems need to be in place in order for us to affect this change or this new product or this new leap that we're going to take. And so it's those four things: the people, the processes, the price, the finances, and the purpose. And I just think through those four things and make sure they tick those boxes. And then peace. If I have a peace about something, and also with the team. So I don't make any major decision without my business partner being in 100% alignment with me, and also feeling a peace and feeling good about that. And so we'll do that planning. We'll talk through things. I also won't leap as fast. I'll get excited about something because that's me and I'm a big picture and I can see, if I see it in my mind's eye, I know I can do this thing. But what I do is I force myself to just slow down a bit. I just wait a little bit. I go, it doesn't have to happen right this very minute. And the minute you slow it down, all of a sudden you realize, oh, hold on, I didn't think about that. Oh, this has happened. Oh, we've discovered that's actually not the right supply. It's better to use them. Or, oh, we can do it cheaper, or we can do it a bit more efficiently. So just allowing yourself time and slowing it down can mitigate some of the risk. But in life, you've got to. I found the times in my business where I got too protective because of near failures and near closures and weathering some of these hectic storms, You come through that and then you go, oh, okay, let's be protective. Let's be very conservative. Let's be very careful. I actually found my business regressed. It regressed.
Sure.
You cannot rest on your laurels. You cannot be too conservative, too complacent, too comfortable. Think this is our little thing. Okay, we're happy. We can pay the bills. We can pay the staff. We've got, enough income coming in. Okay, let's just stay comfortably where we are. You actually can't do that because what isn't growing is regressing. It's like that in nature. You just have to take an example from nature. If a plant isn't growing, if nature isn't growing, it's dying, it's regressing. And so we have to be making progress. You have to be innovating continually. You have to be and those leaps are hard because it gets comfortable and you think, oh, for just the last few months, I don't have to worry about cash flow, for example. Can we just stay in this place? No, you can't stay in this place. You've got to keep leaping. Those little leaps of faith per se.
Yeah. So let's leap then into my rapid fire questions. But before we get there, I suppose just to ask, if people want to get hold of you or learn more about what you do, what's the best way?
So our new website that encompasses more of our other ranges is cryoslices.com. 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 And our contacts on there and all our information. So easy enough.
Yeah, super. All right, so rapid fire is just the first thing that pops into your mind.
Okay.
What comes to mind when I say failure?
Opportunity.
What is your secret weapon for bouncing back from a setback?
My faith.
What's the most important lesson you've learned as an entrepreneur?
Slow down.
What's the best advice you have ever received as an entrepreneur?
Don't take on private equity or partners or venture capitalists or give away too much equity too quickly. Get your business as far as you possibly can on your own esteem. It will double your value and what you're able to negotiate. That was probably the very best advice.
Yeah. And what inspires you to get out of bed in the morning?
Vision and passion. Vision, passion. Vision and passion.
Mm. And obviously for you, it's a very...
Sorry? Passion for what I do and the vision that is still ahead of me, knowing what I still want to accomplish. And I want to change the world. I know it's everybody does, but I still, from a little girl, I wanted to make a difference in the world and change the world and impact the world and leave my mark. I haven't done that yet well enough. And so that gets me out of bed every day.
Super. Well, then just to end off, if there was any advice you would give someone who's just really has that urge in them, they've got something they want to create or the value you want to add or that, entrepreneurial kind of thing, but they are struggling with the fear of failure and hesitating to take that leap, what advice would you give them?
So strong foundations, meaning, so get your house in order, make sure you've got rid of any peripheral debt that you can. You don't need cell phone contracts. You can be on a pay-as-you-go. You don't need clothing accounts. You don't need all of those things. If you can, if your car's really expensive and big, you can sell it and have a small one that, just try and get out of as many monthly overheads that you're tied to as possible to take some of the pressure and the stress off. Then understand the price that you're going to pay. It's hard work, it's sacrifice. Just get rid of out of your mind that there's going to be fancy holidays and dinners out. You've got to build your business first, and you've got to put everything you have into that business. Your business comes first. Always. If you want, it's like a baby. You've got to grow this baby up, and there will come a time you can take good salaries and buy fancy. It's not the time when you start out. And then make sure you've got a good support network. Make sure that, for example, if you're married, your spouse is with you on the journey. They've bought into it and they're supporting you. I've seen many women especially close down businesses and give up their dream because they didn't have the support. So you need to make sure you've got the support network in place. And then think through it, get a business plan template. It'll build confidence. Think through every single area of your business. It'll ask you questions about your target market, your pricing, your competitors, everything. Very important to think through and put down, even in writing for yourself, all of those different areas of your business, and then go for it. Take the leap. I mean,
yes.
What's the word? We always land on our feet somehow. And a little trick I learned also many decades ago in a workshop was exaggerate the negative to the point of ridiculous. So if you're fearful, so let's say you're an entrepreneur in a business right now and you think, okay, it's going to be tough. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. What's going to happen? What you do is you exaggerate that. You go with it. You say, oh, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. The police are going to come to the door and lock me up. My friends are going to all abandon me. I'm going to end up living on a park bench in a park. And you actually go, you know what? That's not actually going to happen. And then you realize the worst that can happen is, and it's mostly ego stuff. Okay, I lose a few things. I might have to go back and live with my folks for a while, or a friend or whatever, and take a spare. It's okay. It's temporary. All of these things are temporary. The highs are temporary. The lows are temporary. Most of what we go through in life comes to pass anyway, and somehow you will land on your feet. So just exaggerate the worst that can happen, and you'll realize it's not so bad. It's not so bad. You can take the leap.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Kerryne.
It's a pleasure.
No way.
This has been Risk and Rise with me, Talana Simpson. Thank you so much for joining Kerryne and myself today. We really hope that you enjoyed listening to our conversation and took something of value from it. And do give Risk and Rise a like, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast channel, and hopefully share it with someone who can gain value from what you learned today from us. So just know I believe in you and your purpose, and I hope that you find it soon so that we can risk and rise together.
Thank you for joining me on Risk and Rise, where we face fears, conquer challenges, and rise above adversity to achieve our dreams. Find out more at riskandrise.co.za.